So you're telling me there's a chance. Yes, Chiefs Kingdom, I know I was a little down on it last time we talked, but the Chiefs still have a path into the postseason. And we got some good news this week that makes it a little bit more realistic. So we're going to break that down today on the show. You're watching the Chiefs Report by Chat Sports. My name is Jackson Durham, and here's what we've got coming up today. Number one, we're going to talk effects of Week 14, both the loss in our game and some of the other outcomes that went against us that started to dip the Chiefs' playoff odds. And then, after we get through the bad news, we finally got some good news for Kansas City to discuss. Something happened across the league with the team that we definitely need to lose some games that's going to help us out. And then lastly, we've got an elimination scenario to worry about this week, guys. This is the first week that Kansas City's butt is really on the line in terms of playoffs. If four things go against us that we're going to talk about at the end of today's show, it will be the end of the road for Kansas City's playoff odds. But before we get into all that, I need your guys' help. The bosses pulled me into the office yesterday. They sat me down and they said, look, Jackson, we are stoked on what you're doing on Chiefs in a lot of ways, but we're just not sure the audience is as much. We need to see more likes on the videos, my man. And they told me if we don't get 100 likes on today's video, we may have to slow down content a little bit. And I don't want to see that happen. I know you guys don't want to see that happen. So help me out. Get 100 likes on today's video. Get down there and drop one for me and help us hit that goal. And speaking of dropping, let's talk about the biggest drop for the Chiefs playoff odds yet this season in a single week. We entered the Sunday slate with 37% odds to make the playoffs by the New York Times playoff machine. And we woke up on Tuesday morning after our loss against the Texans, and especially after the Chargers win on Monday Night Football, with just a 12% chance to make it. So if you remember, last week, for the real ones, I gave you a Week 14 rooting guide, and it looked a little bit like this. Colts lose to Jags on Sunday. Bengals beat Bills on Sunday. Eagles beat Chargers on Monday Night Football. And then, obviously, of course, we're rooting for ourselves on Sunday Night Football. And if you watched around the league, not many of those outcomes went our direction. Obviously, we lost. Jags did beat the Colts. One team came through for us. Shout out Trevor Lawrence and the boys down in Duval. But the Bengals lost to the Bills, and the Eagles lost to the Chargers as well on Monday Night Football. And just an extra point on that one, that stunk. I hated having to root for the Dirty Birds not the Dirty Birds, the Birds in Philadelphia. There are the Dirty Birds, though, up in Philly. And they can't even come through for us. We have to root for this stinking team, and they can't even get a win the one time I actually want to see them do it. Pathetic. But here's how the AFC playoff picture shakes out after all of that. Chargers and Bills at 9 and 4, sitting in the wild card spots. Obviously got the division leaders, which we don't really need to worry about. We don't have a chance to win the AFC West anymore. Our eyes are on one of those three wild card spots. That's the last path left for us, and we're in that group of three teams at 6 and 7. Don't comment the me. But we need to get in front of Indianapolis or Houston, both sitting at 8 and 5. And finally, we got some good news. Finally, some good news for Kansas City on that front that's going to help us make that happen. Something happened this week, and we're going to get into it in just a minute. But before we do, I have got to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, and that is Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. And guys, it is the holiday season, the best time of the year for sports. Whether it's bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it is all happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day, whether it's what gifts to buy, what to eat, which game to watch, there is one place where it feels good to be right, and that is Prize Picks. And guys, new feature alert on Prize Picks. They now have early payouts. These rock. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before your game even finishes. Super, super cool. And I've got my lineup put together for Thursday Night Football for you guys already. So you can tail it if you want. You can fade it if you want. But I'm going with the more on Baker Mayfield's rushing yards, excuse me. I'm going with the more on Bucky Irving's receiving yards. And I'm going with the less on Kirk Cousins' passing yards. So once again, you could tail me, you could fade me. Just do it at Prize Picks because I love how straightforward Prize Picks is. When I was putting this lineup together, I didn't have to spend any time calculating what the payout was going to be. Prize Picks just told me right away this was a 6x multiplier, going from $20 to $120 if I was going to go with that. So whether it's just a simple 3x or a big 2000x, Prize Picks makes it easy to understand how much I can win, and I absolutely love it. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Shout out Prize Picks for sponsoring today's video. We always appreciate them. And let's get into the news that has a positive impact on Kansas City. And starts with Daniel Jones. He goes out for the season with an Achilles tear. This is not the good news. We are not celebrating that Daniel Jones is out for the season. We are, however, celebrating what the Colts did in response. So when they lose Daniel Jones, they filled in immediately with Riley Leonard. And Leonard played okay for a rookie in his first game. But he also got a PCL strain. His knee is injured as well. A lot of knee injuries in the Colts quarterback room right now. So what do? Only healthy quarterback left on the roster is Brett Rippon, and he is on the practice squad. So they go out, and they do one of the most baffling things of the entire NFL season so far, and maybe a few years before that as well. They signed 44-year-old Phillip Rivers to their practice squad. Yes, the Hall of Fame semifinalist, who turned 44 on Tuesday this week, is rejoining the Indianapolis Colts. What a wild, wild turn. And after I got over the what the hell aspect of this, because why are they doing this? This makes very little sense to me. It dawned on me that this is great news for Kansas City. Because look, right. So if Phillip Rivers plays at 44 years old, you rewind in your mind back to the last time we saw Phillip Rivers take snaps in the NFL. It was actually with the Indianapolis Colts in 2020 in that COVID-shortened, very weird season. He didn't play very well. There's a reason he called it quits. What's he going to look like 5 years removed from taking any NFL snaps? Coaching high school football in Alabama for the last couple of years. Very good high school football coach out in Alabama. But hey, man, I think you probably should have stuck to it. Because the other point of this, if Indy feels the need to call up, of all people in the world, Phillip Rivers, and that is who they were like, yeah, you know what, we can't get anybody else on the line, but we got Phillip Rivers, and we still need to bring him in. What does that say about Riley Leonard? How bad is that guy? I hate to say it, but, and I know people have made the argument, he's coming in to develop Riley Leonard. Riley Leonard needs mid-season development from a 44-year-old? We need to pull a 44-year-old away from his 11 kids to mid-season develop our projected starting quarterback at this point? That guy's not ready. That's a guy that we, as Chiefs fans, need under center. Either Leonard or Rivers. I don't care. Either of them are going to stink. But why does any of this matter? You may be sitting there wondering. This is the Chiefs report. This is not the Colts report. Why are we talking so much about the Colts quarterback situation? Well, remember, if we want to get one of the wild card spots, it requires losses from Houston, losses from Indy, or losses from LA, or honestly Buffalo as well. Indy is now in a position to lose a lot of games. Indy losing out their entire schedule actually feels pretty realistic. And I know that's crazy, right? This Colts team, just a couple weeks ago, were the darlings of the NFL. They're balling out with Daniel Jones. They're balling out with Jonathan Taylor. What happened? Well, they had a very easy schedule, and Daniel Jones was a big part of their success. And now, the schedule ain't so easy anymore. You look at the final 4 games of the Colts season. They face a murderer's row. On the road in Seattle, they're 10-3. At home against San Francisco, those guys are 9-4. At home against Jacksonville, big divisional matchup, those guys are 9-4. On the road in Houston, those guys are 8-5. You're not going to play a single team for the rest of the year that isn't better than 8-5. I think it's pretty realistic, especially if Riley Leonard or Phillip Rivers are under center, which okay, that's going to happen unless Anthony Richardson comes back, which is very unlikely, that they lose out. That every single one of these games goes against them. I don't think they're good enough to beat any of these teams the way they're lined up right now. And every Colts loss is like an extra win for us at this point. I need you guys to remember that. But conditionally on the fact that we win. Because look, I mentioned off the top, there's an elimination scenario this week, and it has jack to do with the Colts. If we don't win our games, it's never going to matter. Nothing that we just talked about, all the hope I just gave can go away pretty quickly if we don't beat the Chargers this week. Because the elimination scenario does require a number of other things to happen. But when you look down this list, Bills beating the Patriots seems pretty realistic. Jags beating the Jets, I'd bet a lot of money on that. Texans beating the Cardinals, I would throw the same amount of money down on that. Those two last outcomes are almost guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed in the NFL, but I don't think you can afford to lose in Week 15. Does anybody want to take the bet that these three things don't go that way? I sure don't. I wouldn't. We have to win. We still control it if we win. We don't control our path into the postseason, but no one can take our chance away if we win this week. But no matter what happens, I'm going to be here with you guys. That pretty much wraps today's episode. But I want you guys to know, even if the Chiefs are eliminated from the playoffs, nothing is changing here. We are going to cover the Chiefs rest of this season. We're going to cover them into the offseason. We're going to have some draft content going. A lot of things I think the Kansas City Chiefs can do this offseason to really improve. I think this is going to be one of the most important offseasons in Kansas City Chiefs franchise history. So hit that subscribe button. Stay plugged in. We're going to cover it all. And thanks for hanging out with us today. We'll see you next time.